You are listening to the Lucha Central Podcast Network. And now, Lucha Central Weekly.
Hello and welcome to a very special edition of the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast, English edition. I'm Miranda Morales. I'm being joined by Brendan Barr and Dusty Murphy, and we are here, well, like I said, we are going to be doing something special today. We are going to be doing our end of year awards. And not the full awards today, but today you're going to learn about our categories and nominations. And then in next week's episode, we're going to let you know the winners of each of these categories. So we're going to break it down for you today. We're going to be exploring each of the nominees and why they were nominated, and, you know, do something that as a new show we have not done before, but one that we are very excited to bring to you, the listeners and viewers, because as this is a special edition, we are also recording this via video, so that way you can watch this on the Lucha Central YouTube page. But before we get to it, Dusty, Brendan, how's it going today?
Oh, it's going fantastic for me. How's it going for you, Brendan?
I'm doing good. It's warmed up a little bit in Seattle, so I'm wearing a shirt today.
Yeah.
Man, that's nice. I mean, yes, I'm in sunny Arizona, but of course, when it goes under 60 degrees, I'm frozen. So that's just a personal challenge that I've had all of my life. So, but we're doing well. So I'm excited to be with you gentlemen, today. I know we are excited to do our end of year awards, going through our nominations. We'll be jumping into those in just a little bit. But before we do that, it wouldn't be the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast without a little bit of news. So, Dusty, tell us a little bit of what's going on with the AAA. And last week, we talked about some of the legal drama that AAA has been going through. And it seems like it's continuing to transpire and affect other areas of the promotion.
It absolutely is. Friday night, the 18th, there was kind of word that, you know, people started noticing Facebook. You know, AAA's page was down. You couldn't watch Triple Mania on Facebook anymore. And so it went around by Saturday morning. I even started messaging some people I knew through the larger international Lucha Libre fan community. And it wasn't available in England, wasn't available in Ireland, wasn't available in Colombia. And so but it is available in Mexico. So it's definitely tied to the lawsuit. And, you know, like, we'll run it down really quick. There's a lawsuit going on, and basically AAA Mexico and AAA in America are owned by different entities, or co-owned by different entities, because of Lucha Underground. And so AAA USA is Lucha Libre FMV, and they are arguing that they are owed all the money generated by YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, etc., because those are American companies, and these American companies are sending revenue to AAA Mexico. AAA Mexico vehemently disagrees that people in Mexico are watching on these services, and, you know, it's not all American viewers. And so I think that's why the Facebook page is at least still visible in Mexico for now. And, you know, and also by blocking that, it also won't generate any money that Lucha Libre FMV could claim as theirs. But maybe, you know, the Lucha Libre FMV shot themselves in the foot by trying to get them taken down. Who knows? There's so much mystery in the inner workings of Lucha Libre that it could be almost anything. And we have no idea what it, you know, where any of this could be coming from, what the source is. Right now, there's no official word from AAA. I know that Lucha Blog has reached out and didn't get a response. Several other people, I don't believe Lucha Central got a response. So it's anybody's guess right now, but it's absolutely seemingly tied to the lawsuit, and it could not come at a worse time for AAA. They had such a hot Triple Mania last week. They had the Marvel and Funko Association. You know, there's a lot of money coming in with and behind that. Anytime all the masks are made by Vuccio like that, you know, there's money involved, and he made all four. So, like, that's one of the subtle signs that there was a lot of money invested in the Marvel thing. So it'll be interesting to see what comes of all of this and who pays who. I think that the USA faction that controlled Lucha Underground are largely looking for a payout compared to a lot of lawsuits, and I think they think there's a lot of Disney and Marvel money coming in, and they want their piece. And this is, I guess, why we saw the breakdown of the relationship with Twitch and why Triple Mania was moved all, you know, to YouTube and Facebook.
In retrospect, that makes so much sense why that would break down.
And what's very interesting is if it was involved in the lawsuit and it was the U.S. side trying to get it taken down, the 19th of December, the day after all of the stuff started to happen, was the original planned date for Triple Mania, but it was moved up to the 12th because of TV. And so they just got really lucky. So it could be on AAA's end, it could be on the lawsuit end. There's all these machinations behind the scenes that make it even more confusing than Lucha Libre backstage politics usually are. And I mean, they're a mystery to everybody, I think, but this is especially a mystery right now for most people. And so we'll see what develops, and we'll have the news on it as it comes along.
Excellent.
Yeah, lots of news. Speaking of, I do have, this is one of the t-shirts that was part of the collaboration.
Yes, so cool.
And Marvel Lucha Libre. So yes,
love that.
This was not, even in U.S. currency, was not cheap. So yeah, I have a personal vested interest because I feel like my money has been stayed here that I've already invested. But, you know, you're right. In some ways, luckily, they were still able to stream Triple Mania on YouTube and Facebook last week. But yeah, as far as the momentum, the visibility, all of that, just having people being able to watch it again, those who weren't able to watch it, having those restreams available, you know, now they're missing out on engaging with such a large market. And yeah, it's a very pivotal time right now. And
my typical viewership of a pay-per-view like that is so much. I'll watch it live like we did and then I'll watch it 2 or 3 more times just to get details out of it.
Absolutely,
to find out, you know. So they're hurting viewers like me who are the diehard fans that want to see an event like this 3 or 4 more times, and just to kind of add to that profile that we were building there.
Great. In other news, Ring of Honor presented Final Battle on the 18th as well, Friday, December 18th. And this was a show that aired live on pay-per-view, but also had some challenges already going into the pay-per-view. Several wrestlers had either tested positive for COVID or had some COVID-related challenges that prevented them from being on the show, including EC3 and Bandito. I forgot who were the other two.
EC3, Bandito, Flamita, and Kenny King.
Yeah.
Kenny King, yes.
There we go.
Yes. So, that in and of itself was a challenge to the show, but based off of the way that the show went and some of the buzz online, fans are very happy with it, that it definitely felt like a Ring of Honor of old. And for Lucha Libre fans, a fantastic night of Lucha Libre, with, going into the championships, Rey Horus, represented part of the trios championship because Bandito and Flamita were not able to be there. So Rey Horus had his own match against Ring of Honor favorite Dalton Castle, whom we haven't seen. He was part of the Pure tournament, but really just Dalton Castle. This appearance of Dalton with the boys, the comeback of the boys, for some fans was really great. But Rey Horus won that match. Next we had Dragon Lee defeating Tony Deppen, to retain the Ring of Honor Television Championship. Now, Tony Deppen, won this opportunity earlier in the night by winning a 4-way match between Josh Woods, LSG, and Dak Draper. So, kind of viewed as a bit of an underdog going into this match.
Absolutely. I was shocked. He's the newest to ROH of those names. Sorry.
No. That's exactly, again, kind of confirming the things that I've seen online as well. And I think a lot of people's thoughts, which, again, that's kind of the beauty of these types of, shows, especially ones that, have kind of matches in the early part of the show that then lead into the later part. But Dragon Lee retained his championship, which is also, left a lot of people kind of buzzing because he was one of the names speculated as far as his contract coming up soon with Ring of Honor. And so now it does seem like, at least for now, he's going to be staying with Ring of Honor. And he's still going to be their television champion. So that does lead us, though, into the main event, because Dragon Lee had some involvement in the world title match between Rush and Brody King. Your Ring of Honor world champion Rush successfully defended the championship, and not without some controversy. Dragon Lee provided a distraction that allowed, I guess, the newest member of La Facción Ingobernable, someone, in Lucha, we talked about it. It is all about family. And certainly the newest member of La Facción Ingobernable is family. La Bestia del Ring, who was the father of Rush,
and Dragon Lee.
And Dragon Lee, yes. Hit Brody King over the head with a chair and allowed enough of a distraction for Rush to keep his championship. And afterwards, there was an interview through Ring of Honor social media website, or through social media pages, in which Rush cut a promo in Spanish, pretty much saying that nothing in Ring of Honor will happen unless he allows it. And cool. La Facción Ingobernable is stronger than ever. The presence now of the father, La Bestia, the ring. And we may even see him in a ring, who knows? But it seems like they are now stronger than ever. And now with this whole family dynamic, it sounds like, again, same thing. Rush's contract was speculated to be up very soon, and we were wondering, he could easily go to any promotion. Is he going to stay with Ring of Honor? Signs are pointing to yes for now.
You don't sign your dad to the new promotion.
And hey, maybe that was part of the negotiation, especially, with Dragon Lee and Rush being brothers, both of their contracts being up soon.
Yep.
Leveraging that as part of, one of the reasons for them to stay. So, overall, the Lucha Libre presence in Ring of Honor is still fairly strong.
Stacked. I do want to stress on this. This is, Bestia del Ring is new to the Ingobernables, the Facción Ingobernables in ROH, but he was, the standard bearer with Rush when they were still in CMLL. He was touring the Indies for a little while with Rush, and they were carrying that. So,
even AAA, Guerrero to Titans last year, Rush announced that he was forming a new La Facción Ingobernable with Bestia del Ring and LA Park and Killer Cross and somebody else, I can't remember. But very cool.
So those of you that are new to him, there's plenty of footage of him up on YouTube, even without AAA's YouTube channel. So you can go investigate that. He's a very interesting character.
Absolutely.
Oh. There you go, your final battle results. Again, if you are a fan of wrestling and Lucha Libre, you're any style of wrestling, really, Ring of Honor is a place where it seems like you can find that, whether you have pure championship matches or pure
that pure tag team match. I was
Lucha
so
Libre
happy with that.
match
So
is fun.
good.
I mean, again, it's something that it seems like many fans were pretty happy with the results from Final Battle. And we will see. It looks like Ring of Honor is continuing to do regular television tapings, so they will continue with that, and then we will hopefully will see another pay-per-view like this in 2021.
Soon into 2021, hopefully.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, hopefully soon. Yeah, and again, now we have so much variety now with Ring of Honor and MLW back, of course, WWE, AEW, Impact, and these are all within the States. But then, of course, AAA, even with the legal challenges, it seems like we're still going to be getting some products in 2021. Same with CMLL. Same with all the various independent promotions throughout Mexico and throughout the world as well. So even though 2020 has been a rough one, it's ending on a pretty good note.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Things are looking up.
we're on a nice upward trajectory for next year. I'm optimistically excited.
Yes. Well, with that, before we get into the end of year awards and going into the nominees, first, we just got to let you know that LuchaCentral.com is your centralized place for all things Lucha Libre. The Lucha Central Weekly Podcast English edition is a proud member of the Lucha Central Podcast Network, which you can find on LuchaCentral.com, as well as other fantastic podcasts there. You can check them out also through your favorite podcast streaming platform like Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, Speaker, Podbay, and iHeartRadio. And of course, you can also check some of these out on Lucha Central's YouTube page. This will be on Lucha Central's YouTube page, including other interviews and podcasts and Lucha Libre matches. So again, LuchaCentral.com, your centralized place for all things Lucha Libre. Don't forget to check it out. Now we're getting into the meat and potatoes, or la carne y la arroz, or I call them gandules. That's a Puerto Rican thing. Some people call them frijoles. That's not a terminology that our gandules are, is a special type of bean. Anyways, I'm sorry, I get carried away with Lucha Libre.
No, I love it. I love it. Please give us more facts.
So cool.
But anyways, we're getting into the heart of this week's episode, which is the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast 2020 End of Year Award. So myself, Brendan, and Dusty, we've come together, we've pulled our minds, our thoughts, our viewership for this year, and we've come up with 6 categories that we are going to be introducing, and also nominees of those categories. Each one of us will be discussing these categories and the nominees, and we're going to be letting you know why we nominated these wrestlers, these luchadores and luchadores, and we'll talk more, because it's not just that, it's a lot more. Why we nominated the nominees, having maybe some healthy discussion too about who we think should win, who may win. We don't know yet. So that's why we're having this with all of you. And we'd love to hear your thoughts as we're going through these. Please feel free to leave us comments through in reviews through all of the podcast streaming platforms we talked about, through our social medias. We're really excited to know your thoughts on our nominations for the 2020 End of Year Awards. So before we get into that, let me tell you what our categories are. We have 6 categories, and they are Rising Star of the Year. And this is someone who we believe is not necessarily someone who's new to wrestling or lucha libre, but someone whose trajectory, someone who's had just an amazing year, and we anticipate better things for them in 2021 and beyond. We also have Trios of the Year, which is your favorite lucha libre trio, along with Tag Team of the Year. Pretty self-explanatory. Then we have Luchadora of the Year, so your favorite female luchadora, your Luchador of the Year, and Match of the Year. So those are our 6 categories for the 2020 End of Year Awards. Rising Star, Trios, Tag Team, Luchadora, Luchador, and Match of the Year. So as I mentioned, We are going to be going through each category, letting you know the nominees, and then giving a brief explanation as to why we nominated these individuals, and in the case of Match of the Year, that match. So that way you get a sense of where we're at. And also, again, if you agree, let us know. If you disagree, let us know. We'd be very interested to know our listeners' and viewers' thoughts. So let's jump to it. The first category, Rising Star of the Year. As I mentioned, this is less about maybe who is new to Lucha Libre and just someone who had an amazing, amazing year. So in this category, we have 6 nominations, starting first with AEW Sammy Guevara.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, okay. Read all of them off.
Yeah, let's read them all through.
Number 2, AAA superstar and friend of the show, Mr. Iguana. Another AAA superestrella, Hijo del Vikingo. New to WWE, Dominic Mysterio. Former NWA Women's Champion, Thunder Rosa. And NXT's Raquel Gonzalez. Now, I do have to note, we do have we're gonna talk about these first, and then we'll go into this other little tiny bit. Because
there was some serious discussion on this category, folks.
There was. There's always serious discussion in my head about how to do this, so that too is a little complicated. But yeah, so those are our 6 nominees for Rising Star of the Year.
Why should you visit thechairshot.com? Thechairshot.com is your home for hard-hitting reviews, news, opinion, and analysis with attitude. Why? Because you're smarter than the average fan. Thechairshot.com. Always use your head.
Hey everyone, it's Denise Salcedo here in Lucha Central with a reminder of where and when to catch all of the great network content this week. Get the full lineup and listen to all of our shows in the podcast network section of luchacentral.com. On Tuesdays, Math, Mats, and Mayhem takes you inside the world of Lucha Underground as they take you weekly through the series with the benefit of hindsight and the benefit of special guests from the groundbreaking series. Check out the premiere video stream every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern on the Lucha Central YouTube channel and at luchacentral.com. Then listen to it on your favorite podcast platform every Wednesday. Tuesday nights live is WrestleBoss, where Fabi Chulo talks MMA and pro wrestling with special guests and listener call-ins. Visit WrestleBossLive.com Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific to listen live or call in with questions or download the show on podcast platforms on Wednesdays. Wednesday nights live on Facebook, it's Spanish show La Mesa de los Márgaros, giving you both the news and the chisme from around the lucha world. Special guests and a whole lot of fun make it one of the most talked about shows in Mexico. Thursdays, it's Straight Out of the Bodega with Papo Esco and PWR promoter Gabriel Ramirez as they have guests from throughout the wrestling world pull up to give an inside look into their careers. From indie standouts to television superstars, each week brings a new name and perspective. On Friday, it's your double dose of Lucha Central Weekly podcast, one in English y el otro en español. Lucha Central Weekly is where you'll find all the top stories of the week, both inside and out of the ring from Mexico and anywhere luchadores are in action across the globe. Be sure to subscribe and follow all your favorite Lucha Central Network series on your favorite podcast platforms, either by their own series name or subscribe to the Lucha Central Podcast Network show pages to get all of the shows in one easy feed. And please consider giving a rating to help more fans find the shows that you love. For now, this is Denise Salcedo signing off from Lucha Central. Have a great week.
Lucha-Masks.com by Pro Wrestling Revolution, bringing you, in partnership with Mask Republic, the Lucha Brothers, as well as Japanese legend Ultimo Dragon. Go to Lucha-Masks.com and fight Lucha Strong with masks from your favorite Lucha legends and Pro Wrestling Revolution luchadores. Stay safe in style and represent your favorite luchador. Get yours now at Lucha-Masks.com, powered by Pro Wrestling Revolution.
Now, Brendan, you started off by talking a little bit about Sammy Guevara, so let's start off with that.
It's just really hard to argue with the trajectory that he is on. He went on to this year. Like he went as kind of, you know, the B-list guy for a faction in AEW, but stood out in every match that he did with them, to the point where he was being memed for the golf cart scenarios.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know, and then he had a match which was, the potential for it was cut off a little bit at the knees by an injury, but he and Matt Hardy were working a fantastic match.
And feud. The feud was great.
Yeah, the feud and everything. So, I mean, it's really hard. He was an easy nominee for me. He was one of the first people that came to my mind for having that meteoric rise.
He was for me too. He has that, you know, that je ne sais quoi, the stardust, more than anybody else on the list for me.
Mm-hmm.
He, you know, like you talk about that brass ring. That's a common phrase in wrestling, but he grabbed that brass ring. Everything that they handed to Sammy, he exceeded everybody's expectations every time.
Yeah.
And like, that is, physically he did it, like his promo skills, his on-camera work, his ring work, everything has just been a perfect 10 this year. And I mean, like, unparalleled for me this year.
Yeah.
Now, I want to jump to another nominee. One, because I feel like we have to kind of defend ourselves, but not defend ourselves with the nomination of Mr. Iguana. Because yes, I mean, in full transparency, he is a friend of the show. However, when you look at his presence, and also whether it's social media presence, whether his in-ring ability, and really where he's placed in AAA right now, he truly feels like a rising star.
He really does. His YouTube and TikTok and everything have taken him to the next level. This was the year that AAA kind of bumped him up to a full-time AAA guy. And so he, you know, we talk again. I mean, he took every opportunity that they handed to him and, you know, did exceedingly amazing things with it beyond anybody's expectations. The stuff he does with Yeska is next level. You know, like if you like that kind of wrestling, like he is the best at that. When she had the mask on at Lucha Fighter, she got involved in the match at Triple Mania. His work with Yeska, and especially the way he connects with kids and younger fans. I mean, he really is a star on the rise, and he's been around, but if you didn't follow indies or certain areas, the Sinaloa areas, you wouldn't have known a whole lot about Mr. Iguana. But this is the year, if you're a Lucha fan, you know Mr. Iguana's name no matter what. And so like that absolutely has to include him. And he has that, I mean, he's got the character figured out, the physicality of the Iguana. Everything he does is just so perfect and so sharp.
Yeah.
And he has to be included on this list.
If he hadn't had that more hardcore edge to him in that last really big internet fight he had, I might not have seen nearly as much of the giant rise but I mean, like he showed the tools and versatility that proves to me that he could do a main event scenario, and be part of it.
Absolutely. And
Miranda was trying to say something earlier.
Oh, just to agreeing with Dusty, kind of now being in that full-time role or that placement with AAA, that's also a huge step in his career, and we've seen that in the Lucha Fighter series and the Auto Luchas, and having a pretty coveted spot in Triple Mania. You know, so that is really showing that the company has faith in him, and seems like that is that long-term connection, that it's fairly obvious that the company is investing in him. And so, you know, the fact that we've seen him all through this year, at least through the limited AAA shows, I foresee the same thing happening in 2021.
And for those that don't know, Talalo is Lalo. The last name escapes me, but he's famous in Mexico, like very famous. And Mr. Iguana, he was a comedian. He had a luchador comedy spot where he put on the mask and called himself Tlaloc. But Mr. Iguana was there to defend the honor of Lucha Libre. Like he was Lucha Libre's representative against this guy making a joke of the whole thing. So that's a big deal too for him this year, to be seen as like the guy to come represent Lucha Libre against this very famous internet celebrity in Mexico.
And he did it like I was saying, one of the things that showed me there. He treated that like he was really out to defend it. There was no joke.
He absolutely did.
Yeah.
No time for funny business. He was there to defend Lucha.
Yeah. Now, someone else that actually probably doesn't need any explanation is Hijo del Vikingo. I think this is one that we all agree with is on this list. He had such a fantastic start of the year. He was part of the crossover between MLW and AAA. Had a fantastic match there. Had an awesome match, really an awesome presence throughout the Lucha Fighter series. And even though we hadn't seen a lot of him throughout this year, had a pretty surprising comeback at Triple Mania. But I feel like, and also, you know, when Kenny Omega was asked about who he's going to face next or wants to face next, it was Hijo del Vikingo. And that is not, you know, a voucher of future. The fact that the AAA Mega Campeon wants to face Hijo next, like that's a sign that he's going places.
Absolutely.
He's the only star on this list who was actually hurt by COVID. Everybody else managed to find a way to shine. Hijo del Vikingo went and had a baby and took some time off, which, I mean, as I said during the time, was a good thing for him and his personal life and balance. But had he stayed and continued to wrestle and been on the AAA brand, he probably would have been in the main event picture shortly before Triple Mania and would have been higher on the card, or used in the card actually. So
I think he would have been higher up on the card, but I don't necessarily know that the break hurt him because he had the best match of Auto Luchas with Pentagon. And you know, like people were so hyped after that match, and then where's Hijo del Vikingo? You know, that's what they tell you when you're writing a TV show. You should know if a character's not on screen, you should be asking, where is this character? And that's how we were all summer. Where's Vikingo? Where's Vikingo? You know? And so like it really, I you know, that's another one of those signs of a big star.
I mean, I agree because he was still there, but he's the only one who's momentum, in my opinion.
Yes, absolutely.
I see what you mean. Absolutely. Speaking of momentum, someone who just got straight shot to the top, Dominic Mysterio.
Yes.
Really a one-on-one match with Seth Rollins at SummerSlam. I mean, who does that? I mean, a year ago, none of us thought Dominic was, we thought maybe he'll show up at an NXT, maybe he'll wrestle in AAA. But no, he's just straight up to the top in a program with Seth Rollins. The entire Mysterio family story has been one of Raw and SmackDown's, one of WWE's most popular storylines. And I think overall he's gotten really positive praise from the company and even fans about his performance and his work, to the point where he had a one-on-one match with Seth Rollins, and as I think some fans were surprised, but also felt, no, that makes sense. And since then, there's been some changes with the Mysterio family, and he's kind of played a little bit more of a back seat now, but he is a member of the roster. He is a WWE wrestler. So, I mean,
who debuted at a paid pay-per-view, so you can't take that away from him. Yeah. But that also means that his trajectory next year is going to be hard to match for this year.
Yes.
Very, very
a
true.
lot of that was his debut and introduction, but he really capitalized on that in a way that so few can in WWE, both through ability and like to continue to keep the writers and the booking interested in you. And Dominic, whether through his ability or through his familial association, has been able to do that. And so, like, that's a big part of why he's included versus some others.
I would argue that his familial association is what got his foot in the door, but his ability and his
I feel the same.
His work because I will refer back to this. He and Rey did a promo early on where Rey Mysterio seemed flat and lifeless, and he was the one that had the real passion and
the
grooming
fire.
into the So I think it was his hard work that put him in the position where he's at. But I mean, obviously his last name, or his fake last name, is what got him to this dance.
Speaking of one of the hardest working people in wrestling, Thunder Rosa.
Absolutely.
This is who was NWA Women's Champion for most of this year. Ended up getting a prime opportunity and spot with AEW and has taken that bull by the horns. Also is running her own independent wrestling promotion with Mission Pro. And I mean, if anyone has had such an amazing year and has ridden this line of momentum that I don't think anybody saw, that really broke boundaries between companies, and in pro wrestling, it's
before
Thunder
Kenny did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was the first groundbreaker. Yeah.
So I mean, I think that was one too. I think it was very unanimous in our group as someone who has a rising star. And even though she's not the NWA Women's Champion anymore, I don't feel like she's lost any of that momentum either.
No, not a step.
It's just a pivot now into some different things. But I mean, getting to see her in-ring work, being a part of AEW pay-per-views, and now she's in pretty much one of the best programs that the AEW women's division has ever had.
Yes.
I mean,
absolutely.
Yes.
So, and another thing that really cemented me on her, I mean, the resume for her is super long anyway, but she's only been in wrestling 5 or 6 years. I'm not positive on the timing. It was 5 years when I was listening to an interview 6 months ago. It could be 6 by now. I didn't research that.
Yeah.
But like, that shows the where she's at and what she's doing and how smooth she works, shows just how much effort she's put in, and to go to NWA Women's Champion at the 5-year mark is a huge deal. Like that's, there are people that have been wrestling longer than Dominic Mysterio is old that have not reached that.
Absolutely. And she won a championship in Japan too this year. Yep. She was the Tokyo Joshi Pro International Princess Champion. Mm-hmm. She beat Maki Ito for the championship in January. Like, it was a long time ago now, but yeah, that was also this year.
Yep.
And so, like, it's very cool, you know, like, she did a lot this year to deserve that Rising Star nomination.
That's absolutely, based on this year alone, she's on a huge trajectory.
Mm-hmm. Now, speaking of someone who's on a pretty good trajectory herself this year, Raquel Gonzalez. This year in NXT for her, and it's even, I would say, more within the past 6 months, that we've seen a shift in Raquel. Though, you know, part of her identity changed or her persona changed when she aligned herself with Dakota Kai, she was really looked at that backup, that muscle, that protector of Dakota Kai. Now she's taking a step forward herself and establishing herself, in a dominant role in NXT. And the things that we've seen out of her over the past few months, with, of course, War Games, Rhea Ripley, and even, pinning, Io Shirai, I mean, just the match she's had with Ember Moon. I think there's been a lot of growth. A lot of people have said she's one of the most improved wrestlers, in NXT and probably within wrestling right now. And so using that for, 2021, she could become the next NXT Women's Champion.
I guarantee that she will be in that picture, if not winning it in the next year. And her coming out as the muscle for Dakota Kai happened in this year. I know it feels like forever ago thanks to all the other things, but
I don't remember exactly, but I want to say it happened this year, but I didn't want to quote myself.
I was at NXT Portland when it happened, so I very much have it burned in my head.
So cool.
So, I mean, just that shows you, right? Just because you, what you were talking about, you remembered her as the muscle, and somewhere in between there, then, some pre-COVID and now, she's transformed herself into the match for the world champions. People were absolutely electrified when she had that moment with Rhea Ripley in War Games. She was in War Games and in a main event level match, even.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. It'll be no surprise to anyone who listens to the show that I'm the one that suggested Raquel Gonzalez, because I've been high on her for years, but I feel like she stands with any of the rest of these choices.
She absolutely does. And within WWE, she's unique for being a big woman who's very strong. Compared to somebody like Nia Jax, who's big, but doesn't have that fantastic strength that she has.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, Raquel is just, it's fantastic. She's a former college basketball player, a legitimate 6-footer. Like, she brings so much to it, but to back it up with that strength and that ability in the ring, and that she just understands the camera and has that star power. She captivates you with her charisma when you watch. It's really special, and she's getting more and more as time goes on. It's something that can't be taught, but you can develop it and hone it, and she's figuring that out, absolutely.
She is. Now, I do want to talk about our honorable mention for this category. And
Yes.
This is actually the only one that we have throughout all of our nominations. That just lets you know that this was a very, very challenging category for us, because there were so many people we thought of. But our honorable mention for this category is Angel Garza. He's been one who we've seen a lot more on TV. I mean, you had this whole Andrade Garza team, not team, a lot of that tension, but also even in some of his singles work, he's had that personality, that shine. We've talked about how, even Vince McMahon looks at him and thinks of him as a star. But I think the challenging part is that we just haven't really seen him that much on television in a while.
Yeah.
And there's more frustration with his storylines than anything.
Right.
Absolutely. His booking, his charisma, and his ability gave him that rising star status. Everybody loved to see him, but what WWE gave us for Angel was just not enough. Like, there just wasn't enough at all. And especially towards the end of the Andrade thing, all of a sudden it looked like we were going to get it. And then he injured his leg, and that derailed everything. And then he came back, and ever since he was in a battle royal at the opening for Survivor Series, and then he was in the main event on WWE Main Event on Hulu, like 2 or 3 weeks in a row. He had a little winning streak, then they had Keith Lee beat him, so it's been very up and down for him as far as booking, and that made it harder to choose him compared to somebody like Dominic.
Yeah. I want to point out to the listeners, too, that we had a special guest, Jerry Villagrana, on the show, and we spent a good, 20 minutes talking about how much we like Angel?
Yeah.
Right? We were really high on this guy at the beginning, so the fact that he didn't make the cut says a lot about what's been happening about there. Mm-hmm. But
and it's nothing to do with him. It's just what they're giving him. He's making the best of it. They're just not giving him enough to make the best of.
Yeah, and it shows that we're still able to talk about him with what little they've been given. Yeah.
Great. All right, our next category, Brendan, go ahead and take it away.
All right, so we're going to go with the trios of the year. The trios are something that are kind of unique to Lucha Libre, so I personally thought, I know everybody kind of agreed with me, but it was important that we have that as a distinctive thing, because it is definitely part of Lucha Libre culture. It is something we've talked about, especially on This Week in Lucha Libre, where it is, if you look at periods of history that's the feuds a lot of the time were built around that. So, we have 5 nominees for trios of the year. And we have, I'm going to butcher this, Jinetes del Aire, which is Hijo del Vikingo, Mystices Jr., and Octagon Jr., operating out of AAA. We have the Death Triangle out of AEW, Penta L0M, Rey Fenix, and Pac. We have another AEW team, Jurassic Express, which is Jungle Boy, Luchasaurus, and Marco Stunt. We have NXT's Legado del Fantasma, Santos, which is Santos Escobar, Raul Mendoza, and Joaquin Wilde. And representing New Japan and Pro Wrestling, we have Los Ingobernables do Japan. We have listed here Bushi, Evil, and Sonata, which were the ones that had won some titles this year and were kind of in the conversation, but they are, as a broad rule,
Absolutely.
LIJ in any variation is worthy of being on this trios list. I'm just gonna let you guys go ahead and make some comments there. Go ahead and start us off.
Well, as far as Gentes del Aire, I really think this was their year. Last year at Triple Mania, they won the Trios Team Championships. They had that big three-way match against Poder del Norte and Fresas Salvajes. And then individually, all of these guys broke out this year in a big way.
Mm-hmm.
Il del Vikingo alone through buzz, like he's almost become a superstar just through like the buzz and hype around his name. Mystices and Octagon Jr. put on a couple of the best matches to come out of Auto Luchas this year with Laredo Kid. I really think this was their year. They had much going on.
They had a main event for the MLW AAA crossover too, which was a fire match. So.
Mm-hmm.
No, I agree. As far as like those kind of with the three biggest names or individual as well as a trio, this is the trio that has it all. When I look at some of the other trios, you could tell there's kind of one or two that are a little stronger and more of a leader within these three, Mystices, Octagon, and Hijo del Vikingo. They each individually stand up on their own so well.
Absolutely. Superstars, all three, or rising superstars, if not, next soon to be superstars, next superstars. They are going to be the guys very soon.
Absolutely. I mean, with the Death Triangle, that is one where the idea of it when it first came about was
so
awesome.
Cool. But what have they done?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the pack has been out for most of this time. And again, I know understanding for COVID related reasons, the Death Triangle is kind of now making a wave back. So they're ending 20 very well, which I think helps their case. But a lot of the work seems to really be done with Penta and Rey. And so, we'll, see them, I'm sure, again down the line in some of the other categories. But that's the only fault that I have is that we're talking about your trios. I mean, technically and wrestling wise, these are three of the best in the business, period.
100%.
Yeah.
And individually, but as a trio, that's where there's a little bit of a gap because we just didn't have Pac around for most of this year. So, if talking about like early end of 2020, then they would have a bigger shot. But just 2020 in general, I don't know.
They have a lot of potential, but they're less than the sum of their parts.
It's very interesting. They are the only team that's on here that is pure star power. Like you could take any one of those guys and put them in a main event, and you're going to get a good match. That the three of them can do big things, but they. To the point Miranda was making, they've done less as a trio than any of the others. So are they? Do we want to decide that they're the trio of the year because they're the super trio, or are we gonna like Jinetes del Aire had a lot of success as a trio this year? So I mean, I don't know. That's what we're here to debate.
On the other side, you have Lucha Express. Or Jurassic Express, because, that too, they've had such a stronger presence.
They absolutely have.
AEW and a lot of that. I mean, but when you think about, actual Lucha trio. Some of that really does come more from Luchasaurus, and his background, but you also look at Jungle Boy, and I think he could have a Lucha match with any luchador out there.
I do too.
Yeah.
I feel that way about Marco too.
So I don't know where Marco trained at, but I know that that Jungle Boy is a Southern Cal guy, so he has to know lucha almost by definition. Especially since he did a lot of work at PWG. Like, I mean, you learn lucha by osmosis in promotions and environments like that. But the schools down there, most of them, as we've established over and over again, will teach you American wrestling and lucha so that you have a more rounded profile and can do more matches in that area.
Yeah.
I think Marco trained in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, so he probably didn't have a whole lot of lucha training there. So
his size, his speed,
but his size and his style, and
Yeah.
I mean, he's a very quick, very aerial, and so I think he could very quickly adapt. And he's an adaptable guy. Like, he's got a lot of ability. The sky's the limit for him despite his size. And so I think we could see him wrestle, especially somebody smaller like a Rey Mysterio or a Laredo Kid, and really knock our socks off.
But I mean, Luchasaurus. I mean,
that's our man.
That's the man. I mean, talk about knock your socks off. Like, I think this year we've seen
he knocked some shoes off.
Yes. So I mean, it does seem like this trio may not be a trio forever. That eventually they're all going to part their own ways. But I think that for someone who had a pretty good year between, Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus primarily, but I think a lot of, even just Jungle Boy's work, a lot of it towards the beginning and middle of the year, I think outshined Luchasaurus, but Luchasaurus now from the middle to the end of the year has picked up. So that I think is kind of an interesting thing out of all the other nominees too, where I think one portion of this trio really shined during the beginning of the year, and then now the other portion. And now as far as trio work, we just kind of see it mainly on Dark, which
it's hard to argue with the presence that they have. Like,
absolutely.
That is the reason that I view them as a viable candidate, is that as a trio's entity, they have been in the forefront and in people's brain for the entire year.
They have. They've been more relevant than Death Triangle have as far as like trio and like in-ring relevancy.
It's not crazy talk. It's
yeah, I don't know if he's had more than anybody, but I know that Jungle Boy had 52 matches now, I believe, as of this airing. And
for AEW alone.
For AEW alone. Yeah, 52 AEW matches. And that's incredible. And so that kind of longevity and talent, and that's a sign of how AEW feels about you. You're getting featured all the time. And when they move into whatever, they're building a trios division or at least a direction towards trios, and I truly think that the Lucha or the Jungle Express will be at the top.
Jurassic Express.
Yeah.
I started that.
And I was like,
Lucha Express. We're gonna somehow rename them. That's just the way it's gonna go. I don't know if anyone's surprised by this, but I nominated Legado del Fantasma as kind of, the person who covers NXT and watches it more than I watch some of the other promotions. Every week, we kind of fan and fawn over Legado del Fantasma. This transformation of Santos Escobar, and bringing in Joaquin and Raul, I think has just been such a good thing for NXT, been such a good thing for all three of them. They are part of a stable trio that's viewed as a legitimate threat in NXT. And even though they're really more in that, 205 level, I feel like they just flow so well. They have such a great dynamic. They succeed as a team. A lot of what they do is as a team, and they have been bringing that element of trios and even tag team lucha libre wrestling to NXT, and just the way that they wrestle, the way that they leverage and utilize the space around them in their matches, which makes it so much harder for, I think, other teams to try and tackle them. So I just think of a really solid, well-oiled trio. Legado del Fantasma is it for me.
Absolutely. And they're the best trio in WWE, in my opinion, and NXT, WWE. Sorry, Brendan, go ahead.
No, keep going.
Yeah. Sorry.
Keep going.
But I just feel that he gets it. I mean, Santos Escobar, he gets it. He's been around Mexico for a long time. He gets wrestling. But they have kind of turned WWE style Lucha Libre on its head for luchadors and what they do. And that kind of shaking up the status quo gets them a nomination alone. I mean, they are really changing the game for luchadors. They work together like a team. It's like watching a pack of dogs or a group of sharks. They circle, you know, I mean, like, it's incredible. And I mean that in the best possible way. I love it when they do that. And it's just incredible. They get it on a way that so many people think they get it, but these guys truly get it.
So you kind of hinted at what I was going to bring up anyway. They are on this list the one that is 100% a trio. Like, from the moment that Santos Escobar arrived as Santos Escobar and not any other persona that he's had in NXT, that it's always been about the trio. His singles matches, both Raul and Joaquin have been at ringside, and they've played factors.
They have.
Their tag team matches, Santos has been there and he's played a factor in it. It is, they've always been a trio and a faction from the moment they've been created, to Miranda's point, where also earlier in the year, they're just, their tactics seem to be about getting people separated outside the ring and doing their damage. And that is how they function as a trio, whether it's in a singles match, a tag match, or a trios match. So, I mean, that is my argument right there for why they might be considered for Trio of the Year, because they are the most pure trio of any of the nominees we've got.
Absolutely.
Now, Dusty, I believe this was your nomination as kind of more of our resident New Japan.
I think it was Brendan.
Brendan, okay.
I did, yeah. It was me. Ingo Bernable's... Ingo Bernable's New Japan is a faction that has brought attention back to Lucha Libre in other parts of the world. They, for those that don't know the story, several members have gone to Mexico and worked with the Ingo Bernable's faction out of CMLL, and brought their attitude and their style back, and
that's where Tranquilo came from.
It is indeed where Tranquilo came from. And one of my favorite moments was hearing in the early days of Andrade, hearing people say, "Oh, he's just trying to imitate Naito."
You know what language is supposed to be? Never mind. Yeah.
So I just felt like now, so they are as a group, they didn't get to do as much as the other teams, largely due to COVID and New Japan really shutting things down. And then worse yet, you had Evil kind of turn his back on the LIJ faction. But
that was sad this year.
But they were a faction and a trio at the beginning of the year. They were on pace to do good things before they went with that storyline. So I just felt like they were worthy of a nomination.
I thought the Bushi turn, the trio, and then the Evil turn rather, and, with, Bushi and Sonata kind of being left behind. I loved the whole thing. Like, this was so cool. And as far as Japan, there was no trio that came close this year. I mean, they were really on fire. Yeah. And, I mean, like, even though we didn't see a lot of trios work, the Ingobernables de Japan were still humongous because like we said, Evil won the titles. Naito won the titles. I mean, Naito's Ingobernable. Like, they have had a huge, huge year. Yeah. And they have to be included in any discussion of the best for the year.
Yeah, and that was largely where I was going, is LIJ has had a huge year. I didn't nominate any particular trio, and then later someone expanded on that, but that is the traditional trio, that's fair.
Yes, that was my expanding.
I just knew that was where I was at. That I thought that LIJ deserved a nod for being a consummate trio through the entirety of their
They
existence.
really did, yeah.
Very true, very true. And especially out of all these other trios, one of the longer ones.
Yeah.
One's been together the longest, so very, very good point. Our next category.
Yeah.
Justin, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, next up we had the tag team of the year. Our first nominees were Caristico and Mystico from CMLL. Our second nominees were TH2, Jack Evans, and Angelico from AEW. Our third nominee were Lucha Bros, Penta El Zero M, and Ray Phoenix from both AEW and AAA. Our fourth nominees were Miss Disease Jr. and Octagon Jr. from Gente Stellare and AAA. They have their own tag team within the Trios division because Vikingo was out this year, so they're included. And nominee 5 was Andrade and Angel Garza from WWE. And I'll just be straight up. I've nominated TH2.
That's not a surprise.
We were all racing for that one.
Yeah. I love Angelico. I love Jack Evans, but especially Angelico. And they have capitalized on themselves so well in the last quarter of this year on AEW. They had a little ring rust, but that came off quickly. They had a standout appearance on Britt Baker's waiting room on the first episode. Their personality and charisma is on fire. Angelico just had a huge match with Cody. These guys are on the way up. They have done so much this year, and I think that they could be, so many reasons that they're the tag team of the year, but just how they capitalized on their momentum and, they saw the velocity of things and they grabbed a hold of it in AEW, and I feel like they've done the most in the shortest amount of time.
Yes.
And that gives them the nod.
It's interesting. We probably should have put them as yet even more of a nominee for Rising Star because we weren't even thinking about tag teams, but they would.
Right. Yeah, they could have easily been the rising tag team because so many eyes, those of us that are Lucha fans, those of us that are Lucha Underground fans, we know who these guys are. We've seen them. But a lot of the more casual fans, especially people that are newer to wrestling or younger fans, they haven't seen these guys before. They don't understand TH2. But what they've done this year to capitalize on their abilities has just been fantastic for me.
Yes, no, and I think they're an example of how this flow, we saw them primarily on Dark for a long time.
Yes, we did. Yeah, they built up their momentum and velocity on Dark, and then they moved up to Dynamite, and they really did a lot with that, and it told a story, and there's still a story being told there with SCU, and there's so much more to gain, and I felt like we say, they did the most in the shortest amount of time. Rising Star, they've been fantastic.
And I would hope to see them as AEW tag champions.
Oh, me too. They've got to be in the picture soon. We're seeing the subtle progression there.
Pictures, but I would hope that they actually become tag champions. I feel like AEW puts such a strong emphasis on tag teams, and though I think they've had kind of a slow start, now they're in a place where they are really focusing on where the championships will go next. And I feel like now with the Young Bucks having it, it's more just, I hope to elevate a team like TH2, that they can, if TH2 beats them, it's a huge rub for them. And I feel like if there's a tag team that can truly beat the Young Bucks where they're at, it is TH2.
I agree 100%.
Yes.
Nothing but good things for them if they stay healthy and focused like they did this year.
And also in AEW, tag teams at the top that need to be considered as contenders are the Lucha Bros. We got Pinto, we got Ray Phoenix. They have done such big things individually this year. Their both matches against each other. Penta had a great match against Kenny Omega. Ray Phoenix is going to have one on the 30th against Kenny Omega on Dynamite. They are just at the top of the card. They are top guys in a top tag team, and they need to be in the title picture soon because they deserve that. That was kind of where it felt like it was heading at one time, and then COVID and the kind of travel and everything tumbled funny for AEW there. But now that we've got our rhythm back and kind of on momentum with things, I feel like we're going to see them at the top of the tag team title picture as well.
I mean, I don't really have a lot of words to add to why the Lucha Brothers are on this list.
Yeah,
like,
you'll know, and that's it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, even as recently as Triple Mania.
Absolutely.
And that's their element. That's, you know, I mean, I feel like when we see them in AAA, it's a little bit more their element than we do in AEW. But at the same time, the fact that they are these also Lucha ambassadors for AEW and in this United States audience is huge. I mean, now when people look at not only Lucha Libre, but also Lucha Libre tag teams, you think of Phoenix and Penta.
You absolutely do. And we had also at Triple Mania and Lucha Texas, we had Mr. Disease Jr. and Octagon Jr. They put on some of the best matches this year. Entes del Aire is fantastic. You know, like the sky's the limit for these guys. We saw they also had an amazing 3-way match against Laredo Kid at Auto Luchas. And so whether they're together, whether they're apart, they're just fantastic. These guys are on top of their form. Mm-hmm. And as far as AAA goes, they were one of the most standout tag teams of the year. At Triple Mania, these guys were working on 11. They didn't turn it up to 10. They turned it up to 11. They were amazing. Penta was working with an injured leg, so we did not get Lucha Bros in full effect. But we got Mr. C's Jr. and Octagon Jr. in like extra full effect. It was stunning.
Yeah. I agree. You know, and I think that's also the beauty of, you know, when you have a trio and maybe one person isn't there, and this could be just more of a testament to the trio, but at the same time, Mr. C's Jr. and Octagon Jr. Have such amazing chemistry and
they
are just
do.
Fantastic faces, you know, technicals. Like, I think you just look the word technical in the dictionario and you see them, you know, so I think that's also just a beautiful thing.
And they look cool together, the masks and everything. Yeah. Like they're a cool tag team. Like they're just awesome.
They've got that appeal for multiple generations too, because the cool gear makes them accessible to kids. They're going to be very interested by them. But the high flying will make the more adults interested in them, and then they're fairly attractive looking young men, so I'm sure that the abuelas in the audience will love them too.
Oh, so. Yes, the abuelas, las niñas, las mujeres, you know, that always demographic. You know, speaking of two good looking gentlemen, we have Andrade and Angel Garza on here. How are we not going to talk about good looking men and not bring up Angel Garza? I feel like I'd be true.
That's fair.
And I think this is almost a surprise that they're on here, just because as much as they were a good team, the booking and the writing and the storytelling did not lend in their favor.
No, but their ability shone through all of that. I mean,
I supported putting them in here because what they gave us versus what we expected of them in the position they were in was still great. Like, you know, we still got a good match. We easily, by that logic, could have put in, why did their names just the collective name, the Lucha House Party.
Yeah.
Because they also, but we just had on Angel on the mind, I think,
and despite what limited things they were given, they were in the tag title picture, even though they didn't pull the trigger on them. And the charisma and everything between Angel and Andrade and in the ring, and they had Zelina. I mean, I just feel like that bumped them above Lucha House Party, who aren't functioning as a tag team currently. They're in the 24/7 picture. And so just what they put in, I mean, and like you say, they're good looking guys, like, and that's how you know the brass ring and WWE's a lie. These guys seized it so hard, Angel and Andrade, and they just could not capitalize on it through no fault of their own because they did the best and exceeded every opportunity they were given. WWE just never pulled that trigger on them. They never got that excited. They were just there to tread water until they thought they could bring audiences in, and they suffered for it.
Such a confusing choice.
That whole summer-long feud with Street Profits, it did nothing to derail people's interest in Angel and Andrade, but they still never gave them anything to capitalize on it.
We also have Coristico and Místico on here, CMLL representation too.
Absolutely.
And I think if you think of a team that just flows well, I mean, they are one that automatically comes to a lot of people's minds.
Yeah, they were the first team that popped in my head, but even before the Lucha Bros, when we decided we were doing a tag team, I was like, the Coristico and Místico have been on my tongue in particular because I've been covering CMLL, but they're always there in the picture. Like, then they work together as a tag team. They've held gold as a tag team.
Yeah.
The biggest thing working against them is similar to Andrade and Angel, which is the CMLL booking is often very safe. So they don't get to do a lot of what they really could do in a fun match. They just get to do like 7 to 10 minutes of looks good for tourists and television, and that's about it. And that's really that's the only thing that's holding this team back. They could be a much bigger and much better team.
Yeah, and at one point I believe they were tag champions and Coristico was middleweight champion, right?
Correct.
Like at the same time? Yeah, so that's pretty exclusive and impressive too. That's a sign that, they're very high on them and what they do is that, used to be an old-fashioned rule. You couldn't hold a singles title and a tag title at the same time. So it's really
especially
cool.
not in CMLL, but
yeah, absolutely. That's what I meant with CMLL. But yeah, it's very cool that he gets to do that. So it's, unique and interesting and helps bring them above the standard tag team in CMLL.
Now, I have this not late submission, but one that Dusty and Brendan don't know. But it's all up here. But, in some ways, how could we forget the inaugural AEW Deadly Draw winners? Ivelisse and Diamante.
Beautiful choice.
Yes,
absolutely.
And so I didn't even write it down because I wanted to surprise you with this.
I'm so glad. Yeah. They need to be in the conversation.
They need to be in the conversation, because of the fact that, yes, they won the inaugural Deadly Draw Tag Tournament. Their story of being a team of, individual women with very similar career pathways, cultural backgrounds, wrestling styles. You kind of knew that they were going to come together as tag partners. And when they did for the Deadly Draw tournament, it made so much sense. And their momentum and story through it was one that not only just lasted through that tournament, but we even see kind of carry through with, with some of that Ivelisse, Thunder Rosa heat and that story happening. And we've seen them tag, in a few times after that.
Absolutely.
So I think that, as a team who, really helped change a bit of AEW women's wrestling. And to a really just a strong tag team in general. They had such a great summer that I really wanted to include them. And
I'm glad you thought of it.
Yeah, when they first started out on Dark, when we first started hearing about them, our conversation on the show was, we hope they put them together as a tag team. Like, they've got to put them together as a tag team. And we were so excited, and truly them putting them together as a tag team and signing Ivelisse was the beginning of the kind of revolution of women's wrestling within AEW, where it was finally a serious thing. And Ivelisse was the start of that. Like, it's easy to overlook that now, but she truly was the beginning of that. Yes. And so they absolutely deserve to be in the contention because of that. That is a very cool pivotal moment. I think when history looks back on the AEW women's division, she'll be remembered as the person, kind of like how we remember the match and the women's match, Give Divas a Chance, and that started with WWE. I think that Ivelisse coming in will be seen as the moment that it turned for them.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
I absolutely agree. Before we get into our next category, Brendan, would you like to tell us a little bit more about LuchaCentral.com?
Absolutely. If you're listening to this and you haven't visited LuchaCentral.com, it really is time to do it. LuchaCentral.com is the online home for Lucha Libre, where you can get all of the top news in English and in Spanish. Find the best curated video content and original content not seen anywhere else. Find when Lucha Libre events would be happening in your area. Find photo galleries from top photographers covering Lucha Libre around the world. A place to have your voices heard, from weekly polls to annual awards. Seen and read by top executives in all of the major Lucha Libre promotions across the globe. We're live, folks. This happens.
Yeah.
On top of all of this other stuff, it's free. So, really, really do check it out. LuchaCentral.com, your centralized place for all things Lucha Libre.
Thank you. I mean, we can't tell you enough. Go to LuchaCentral.com.
Yeah. I go every day. I check it out all the time.
It's my homepage now.
Yeah.
All right. So 3 categories down, 3 more to go. Our next category is Luchadora of the Year. Our nominees for this category is CMLL's Avispa Dorada, AEW/NWA/Mission Pro Wrestling / the whole wrestling world, Thunder Rosa, La Reina de la Reinas champion, and you can also see her on Impact Wrestling, Taya Valkyrie, Triple A's Lady Shani, and NXT's Raquel Gonzalez. Now, I don't feel like any of these are a huge surprise to anyone who's listening. I think all of these women definitely need to be in this conversation. But I'm very interested in your guys' perspectives as to, who are you leaning towards? Is there someone that you are favoring?
I know I'm leaning towards Thunder Rosa.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, much like Laredo Kid, she's been independent. She's been everywhere. She built her name up this year and really showed up this year. Mm-hmm. She became NWA champion. Her arc on Dynamite has been legendary. I absolutely think it'll go down as one of the finest runs in all of wrestling, but especially in women's wrestling, like of all time. Her work with Ivelisse and Hikaru Shida was fantastic. The best women's matches that Dynamite ever had, in fact, had Thunder Rosa in them. Her current stuff with Britt Baker is next level, and I feel like she deserves all the acclaim this year, that it's really Thunder Rosa's year.
Yeah, it really is. She was a contender for one of my nominees for Match of the Year, so her match with Penelope Ford, which did not make it just barely did not make my nomination, is still one of my favorite matches that I've seen this year. So yeah,
I can completely understand. I think someone too, even though we didn't get to see her wrestle this much, a lot this year, it seems like when she did wrestle, it was important, was Lady Shani.
Yes.
I feel like every time we saw her in the ring, it was this poignant moment in her career where, one, you could see, the support that Triple A is putting behind her, but her talent is just something else. It's just, and it's undeniable. And both being the winner of the Women's Lucha Fighter tournament and the Gauntlet por la Copa Femenil at Triple Mania is, again, 2 very big wins. So for someone who maybe didn't wrestle as much this year, I think those are 2 big signs that, she is really at the top of Triple A's women's division.
Yes, absolutely.
So based on your initial question of who we think should win, I would argue Lady Shani as well. I think
I know. She was one of my picks just because of her performance throughout the year. And again, we haven't seen her as much this year. And I think that that's very hard when you have someone as Thunder Rosa who, between working even on Primetime Live on AEW in her own promotion, she's actually gotten to wrestle a lot this year. So we've seen
and train.
Yeah.
We're going to see her students on Dark this week. It's exciting. There's a lot going on for Rosa. But like you say, every time Lady Shani wrestled this year, it had an important feel. Every time we saw her, it felt important. It had that big match feel.
Yeah, and she stepped up to it too. She
did 100%.
She did. So I mean, we talked about why Rosa's got the rising star, but Lady Shani has been near the top and just has shown every time why she's in this position. And I just think that she overall did the greatest body of work. And as far as in women's wrestling in this year.
Someone we didn't also see a lot of this year was Taya Valkyrie.
Right.
It's in Lucha territory, even a bit in Impact. I mean, she lost the Impact Knockouts Championship earlier this year when Impact was in Mexico. She lost that to Jordynne Grace, which was she was the longest reigning Knockouts champion in the company. So I mean, that itself, ending that reign, was pretty poignant. And she's been consistent in her work in Impact, even though now it's been a little less on actual storyline driven work one-on-one. A lot of her work's been more with Rosemary and Wrestle House and all that. Again, though, she still is one of those leaders, not only in the Knockouts women's division, but I also just think as a luchadora, that presence is still there. And she is still very highly touted and regarded in Mexico. And she's still
the Reina de Reinas champion in AAA. Yeah, she's very highly regarded.
Yeah.
And she defended that all over, at least England this spring. I don't know if it was Europe at large or England. She had some great matches. She had a trios match, like a mixed gender trios match, where she teamed with Masquerita Sagrada and Mr. Iguana. I mean, she had a lot of titles matches in general. She was Team Chavo on Talkin' Shop-A-Mania too. I mean, Taya was everywhere this year. And you talk about Thunder Rosa being everywhere, but Taya was everywhere, like worldwide.
Yeah,
worldwide. That could be your,
I think her body work worldwide is a better representation than kind of what we see on a weekly basis on Impact. And that's not to diminish her role and work in Impact. It's just that, I mean, we talk about the beginning of the year when she had this really great program with Jordynne Grace. And even at Hard to Kill at the beginning of the year was ODB, Jordynne Grace, and Taya Valkyrie in a triple threat. And so you knew in some ways that the Knockouts Championship was going to go off of her to go on to Jordynne Grace. But then, the company shut down for a while too. Yep. So very similar as Lady Shani, but I think her body of work worldwide speaks more than what she did in Impact this.
Absolutely.
Very true, yeah.
She, like I say, she's been everywhere. Impact has largely been her home this year. But like I say, she was in AAA, she was in Hurricane Pro, she was in bar wrestling. She was at HOW Wrestling in Minnesota, Lucha Vavoom. I mean, she was everywhere this year. I mean, Taya was really everywhere and representing women's Lucha Libre and Lucha Libre at large at so many places. And so she absolutely deserves a mention due to her worldwide impact, no pun intended, and her, reach. She just has a bigger reach than a lot of these other women do.
Now, speaking, I think of fantastic and amazingly talented luchadoras, Avispa Dorada. I think it's very similar to what we've been talking about, especially with CMLL not picking up again until after AAA did. I think that was a challenge in that visibility for Avispa. But I'm interested in your guys' thoughts and kind of how she compares to the rest of this list.
So I put a lot of thought into this. It should be no surprise to anyone. I'm the one nominating her. But so what you were talking about with Ty on a global scale, which is a fantastic transition, because what Avispa did is she is bringing the world to Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
She's from the Pacific Northwest up here. She studied lucha, never wanted to work in the WWE. CMLL was her goal the whole time. And when she got down there, she had to really struggle to find a place on the roster that she could work with, because a lot of the ladies down there are stuck in very traditional looks at matches, which up here and in the United States indie scene, I should say, you have a lot more freedom to do that even in a lucha libre format. So she's the only one that still does an over the top rope dive in CMLL, and that is
oh wow.
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
So I mean, she's not as far as where she's at and the positioning in the company, she's not really very high up. She doesn't have titles. She's not really in contention for titles, but she's slowly but surely kind of helping them expand their profile to be a little more dynamic.
Absolutely.
And a little more diverse in style, and it felt like it was worthy enough of a nomination just for that.
This was the year she went from being somebody I'd kind of heard of to being somebody that I looked forward to seeing, like somebody that I sought out on YouTube. I looked into old matches and stuff. And so this really was a big year for her. I mean, it went from when she went being a name to having name recognition. You know what I mean? Like, and that happened for her this year. And that's a big deal, you know, and it's very cool. I think she also, before CMLL, she had a tryout with the Crash. And I mean, so she's legit. Like, she's been everywhere. Yeah. And it's so cool that she, you know, is representing women's wrestling and women's lucha libre, and she makes masks, you know, I mean, like, she is really connected to lucha libre in a deep and impactful way. And so it's awesome to see her this year kind of get that name recognition. And I think when the travel situation opens up, we've seen her on a couple of Informas now, and the video about masks, you know, to wear your mask for COVID. So I think she's going to be in their immediate plans when things become available.
Yeah. I hope so.
Yeah. Well, Brendan, that actually transitions really well back to the last nominee, and that's Raquel Gonzalez, because a lot of the things that you said about Avispa Dorada, I think, can be said about Raquel Gonzalez. Well, things that both of you said. That, you know, she doesn't have any titles and she's still very much on that rising path, but the work that she's been able to do this year and the changes that she's made in her style and her look and her persona have really it's been a 180. And the presence that she has now in NXT has changed so much from what we knew last year, and even just in the introduction that we had with her in the Mae Young Classic. So I feel like the way that she's taken this new approach and this new side to her, and her style, I mean, she's not a luchadora in the sense of, you know, the high flyer and even the technical side. She is a brawler. She's using strength in her size, but I mean, this is a Texan, you know, second generation. Yeah. She has more of that brutality of lucha.
Yes. Texas lucha is its own thing.
Exactly. And so I feel like we see that. And that's new. That's a whole, I mean, we even see that too a bit with Thunder Rosa. I mean, she could be brutal, but she has at least some mix of MMA and some jiu-jitsu and, you know, a bit of that background. But when she starts hitting hard, I do not envy who's on the other side, and I absolutely
me either. Yeah,
as well. Texas wrestling and lucha libre is its own beast, so I feel like she brings a different representation of lucha libre to NXT and to WWE, and I feel that, you know, everything that she's been given, she takes it and runs with it. Mm-hmm. But also those stare downs with her and Rhea Ripley.
Absolutely.
I mean, those you don't see those kind of chills. I haven't really, especially in the women's division in NXT. I feel like you've seen that too with some of the men's storylines, but it's really the first time when you see two women, that War Game scenario. Like, I just wish there was a crowd there, because that would have just got such a huge pop. But I'm really optimistic about the year to come with Raquel Gonzalez, but I'm also very impressed of the year of 2020 with Raquel Gonzalez.
Yeah. I mean, I've said so many nice things about her over the year, but that's the sky's the limit. She is that heavy duty brawling. She is, I mean, and I've seen Avispa work, but I think she's probably the most pure athlete of all of the nominees we've got. She's so
athletic.
She's done sports her whole life. She lives, breathes, and eats physical fitness, and that it shows in her work as well as her presence, her size. It's not just her size; it's the fact she knows what to do with it.
Yeah.
We haven't seen a female wrestler with this kind of profile before. We haven't. So much like a really big name wrestlers that you could name off, but they're all men from the 70s and 80s, right?
Yeah, kind of like Bruiser Brody or somebody,
right?
But for the women, yeah, I've always felt that way about her.
I mean, we've seen also that Dakota Kai Raquel Gonzalez analogy with Shawn Michaels Diesel, but I feel like they just do it so much better. If she doesn't have some Diesel inspired gear one of these days, just to be like, I'm the Diesel now.
Then like some Big Daddy gear or something. Yeah, like I'd be all in on that.
I wish she still used La Diabla that she used for having Havoc, and I thought that was such a cool name.
Yeah, so cool.
Sorry, but that's a WWE thing anyway.
Yeah.
Those are your nominees for Luchadora.
Those were our nominees for Luchadora of the Year. I'm just gonna, since it sounds like Miranda's having a little bit of technical difficulty, I'm just gonna jump right into Luchador of the Year. So we have 5 nominees. Yes, I literally, thank you, camera, for catching that. I just counted them. We have 5 nominees, starting with Laredo Kid, who is independent, despite the fact that we see him on MLW and AAA, and we've seen him. He's probably going to be in the AAA scene next year, but as of right now, he's an independent star.
Absolutely. I think he's going to be an AEW scene too. I think he's going to be one of their guys very soon. MLW has a working relationship there. They work back and forth, so I think it's inevitable.
We can talk a little more about where he might wind up, but when we talk about that, no worries. That is, you are reading my brain. That is part of the path, but he is, nominee 2 is, Penta L0M, or if he's working in AAA, Pentagon Jr. So he is technically AEW, but as I just alluded to, he also does work with AAA. Nominee 3 would be Octagon Jr., who we've also talked about a number of times through the show, AAA. Nominee 4 is Santos Escobar of NXT. And then nominee 5 would be Hechicero of CMLL.
Very cool.
I'm gonna since you already started on this, Dusty, tell us a little more about Laredo Kid.
Oh yeah, this was really, this was his year. I'm so excited to talk about Laredo Kid. I have to give him my vote. He had an outstanding year. I think this year will elevate him beyond anything that anybody had previously imagined for him, or maybe even for somebody in his position before this year. Like his 2018 or 19 year and his 2021 year, I think people are going to be shocked at how fast he rose with so little going on due to COVID. He gambled on himself in a way that so few people will or can, just to go independent. He left a lot of security to go independent, but look what he's done. Like I said, he's affiliated with MLW, but so is, like, Brian Pillman Jr., for instance, and he works with AEW. So if AEW wants Laredo Kid, I think we're going to see Laredo Kid. He had the best matches at Auto Luchas, all the best matches that people were buzzing about, he was involved in. He had the best match at Triple Mania, Match of the Year candidate match. I mean, don't want to jump the gun a little, but that was a huge match. And I think more than anybody this year, he has capitalized on his potential in what has been a very difficult year to do so.
Yeah, this is definitely a difficult year, and maybe that is part of the formula for him. But at the same time, he's the guy that eyes were on, so good on him, and that is more than enough to make him Luchador of the Year, essentially.
Absolutely, yeah, it makes him a candidate. He can't be denied.
Miranda, did you have any thoughts on Laredo?
No, I mean, just echoing a lot of what you all said, with his talent, the crossover potential with him, and just that this is still so young in his career, and we are going to see hopefully a lot of him more in the future. That I think it's undeniable that he should be a nominee.
Absolutely. I feel the same way about Penta. I mean, or Pentagon Jr. if you're in AAA. AAA owns the name Pentagon Jr. That's why he's Pentagon Jr. there, and why he's Penta El Zero M. And AEW, he owns that name. It makes him money. So I'm going to call him Penta. But he was on fire this year. His match, he had 2 matches against Phoenix that were just, so sweet. The chef's kiss, so good, especially to the second one. His match with Kenny Omega was fantastic. His match against Il Del Vikingo at Lucha Fighter was just beautiful. I mean, people are still, like, if you look around the community online, people are still posting GIFs of that Lucha Fighter match. Like, it's that ubiquitous and popular. And, I mean, he really had a fantastic year. And truly, I think now, thanks to AEW, when you say luchador, even more than somebody like Rey Mysterio, who has been everywhere and has, come to mind for so many people, when you say Mexican wrestler luchador, I think people think of Penta now.
Yeah. I get that when I'm wearing my masks out in public. I've got this. I've got, since we've got the camera, I've got my silver one right here. Yeah. I even get asked. I get asked if that is a Pentagon
nice.
thing.
I've had the same experience. Yeah. It's so crazy that people know who Pentagon. I remember the first time somebody ever said, I like that Pentagon shirt, when I had one on, and I was astonished that they knew who Pentagon was. And now every time I wear something with Pentagon on it, I expect somebody to mention it. And I mean, that just shows where his popularity has gone in the last few years. But this year, especially through AEW and the unique placement on television, he has been able to capitalize on his charisma. He's been able to make the most of himself. Anytime he has a chance, he does something cool that you didn't expect. I think of the cookie sheet that was spray painted at Lucha Fighter, and he checked his look in it, and he thought it looked like him because of the spray paint. Like, it was just so cool, and he has to be included for Luchador of the Year because he's kind of the luchador for so many people, and then the way he does things and the things he does.
Yeah. Just quick shout out to luchamask.com, lucha-mask.com, since I put your product on the air.
Yes. And by the way, those are the nicest masks. Like, I bought my wife one, I bought my grandmother one, because they're so nice in the way they stay on and hold up and the thickness. Yes. Like, everybody should get one of these masks. They are super nice.
And they're going to be adding more Penta and Phoenix styles very soon, so they
retired the styles and they actually become collectible.
Yes,
you ought to see some of them selling on eBay. People are wanting premiums for some of the rare Lucha Bros designs.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
I've seen them resold lately. It's crazy. But also people that made a big splash in AAA, we had Octagon Jr., who made a huge splash. That's another name AAA owns. We've seen a couple of other Octagon Juniors, including Kalisto was an Octagon Jr. at one point. But this is the new Octagon Jr. This guy hasn't been threatened with a hammer or a gun or anything. And he wrestles like it. He is fantastic. We've mentioned him in the tag team scenario. We've mentioned him in the trio scenario. He had the best match at Lucha Fighter with Laredo Kid. I mean, this is really, really good stuff. And he kind of came out of nowhere to have one of the best years. Like, you don't hear him a lot in the best luchador picture of the discussion, but when you look at the matches he had this year, he absolutely deserves to be included. I mean, real match of the year contenders, real barn burners. And like I say, the best of Auto Luchas, you know, and he was in the best two matches, he was in both of them. And Laredo Kid was in both too, but it takes two to tango. And so he deserves some of that credit.
Yeah, absolutely deserves some of that credit. I was going into this, I was really curious to hear your argument how he also was worthy of a singles nominee, but I follow your logic. I think
because everything that they gave that AAA handed to him, he shined, and he did have some great singles matches at Auto Luchas, and you know, it goes to that rising star thing again, but he, you know, like I say, if you look at the listing of matches he had this year, he consistently had 4- and 5-star matches all year long. So he was secretly one of the best of the year. Probably the most overlooked best.
Very secretly. Yeah, if we had an overlooked category, he'd win it.
That's a good way of putting it. Absolutely good way of putting it. Very low-key, under the radar. Maybe under the radar. I wouldn't say low-key because there's nothing low-key about his style.
No, he is fantastic.
But very much under the radar.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, and you made a good case for it. It really showed me that too. So I appreciate it. Well, the next nominee.
You won him over. Maybe you got a vote out of Brendan.
Yeah.
You might have. Who knows? But I'm gonna go right into talking about Santos Escobar, and we've known him by many names during the course of this year. I believe the name change happened this year, right?
Because he was Fantasma, and then when he first went to NXT, he was Jorge Bali, and then this year he became Santos Escobar.
Yeah. So we if we had me from the Mass Mats and Mayhem show on here, he would be screaming at us that there was no other choice. But he as much as we talked about them as a pure trio, he is the charisma and the driving force behind this trio.
Oh my gosh, so much.
And I mean, he is really a kind of a next level wrestling entertainer. Like he's got so much charisma, so much athletic ability, so much talent. The only thing that even remotely is a knock against him on this one is the same thing we have on so many times. COVID really derailed the amount of times we got to see him.
Yes.
And that's not anything that I can take points away for him for. So
this was really
and I think out of all the based out of all of the luchadors in WWE, NXT, Raw, SmackDown, I feel like he not only had the clearest kind of a luchador now in WWE, I think it gets geared more towards Santos Escobar. So I think out of all the luchadors in WWE, he's had the best year. So that was my logic in nominating him out of this WWE group that we've talked about and discussed. He's kind of I think the WWE representative for this category.
Well,
go ahead. I absolutely agree.
And then more to the point, his presence and character as Santos about bringing legitimacy to Lucha Libre, hanging a lampshade on the fact that the WWE does not treat their luchadors well. And then the legacy, heritage, and history that he loads into his mask when he headbutts people.
So good. Yeah. Yeah, just his legitimacy, and like you talked about, his charisma. When he's on camera, you can't take your eyes off of him. When he's got a microphone in his hand, you're just so excited to hear what he has to say. Like, there's something so unique about his appeal and just the way he draws you in. He draws your interest, he draws your eye, and it's so unique and special in the way he captivates like that. And that makes him stand out above the pack. And again, best luchador in WWE right now, in my opinion, for 2020. He was the strongest that they had to offer. And he did that by turning WWE Lucha Libre upside down. And that's great.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. And the final nominee for Luchador of the Year, Herichero.
I think I misspelled it. It's Hechicero, sorcerer or wizard in Spanish.
Yes.
Okay.
I attempted to do that from memory, and I totally should have used a speller.
I saw the 2 C's, so it was just like I had to think about it for a second.
I think you got it right. I recognized it.
Okay. I chose him out of all of the CMLL talent, and actually out of all the luchadors, because that was about this, but I chose him because he's been consistently good. He's just always, again, we're talking about CMLL's booking, which is similar issues to what the WWE does, where they play safe a lot and don't let you do big matches. But I can still find him in a match. I can find him in footage. I can look on Cubs fans' GIFs, and he's in dozens of them because he's doing new and interesting things all the time. He's
absolutely.
Yeah, he's a strong guy, but he's a flyer. He's got a character that he's a little bit of a wizard, but so he's got this cool entrance. But he's also a wizard in that he transitions to submissions and everything else. So I mean, like, he's just this multi-layered character in kind of a very two-dimensional CMLL world. So I just thought that his ability to stand out despite all of that really put him in the conversation.
Absolutely. And his work in 2 out of 3 Falls matches is incredible. Like, that's where he excels, is in the 2 out of 3 Falls match, in my opinion. And, I mean, we see him there. I mean, he's teamed up with Mephisto and El Terrible a lot. Like, we see him, but, or with Shocker sometimes, like, whoever he's with, it's exciting, and he elevates them with his presence. And, I mean, like, I don't want to disparage Shocker in any way, but he's not the Shocker that he was 20 years ago. But you wouldn't know it when you see him in the match with somebody like Hechicero, because he helps cover all that up somehow, even for his own partner. Like, you can do it with your opponent, but he somehow even helps elevate his partners and what he can cover up. And his work is just fantastic.
Yeah, it's always solid. I will once again point to, we've got matches on Lucha Central, and he's on YouTube. I know that a lot of listeners, this may be the first time we've talked about him. Highly recommend it.
I feel like we mentioned him on a DTU show before, though.
we might have.
It's been a long year.
Yes, it has.
And I can't promise that everybody's listened to every one of our shows, but
that's absolutely true too.
It's he doesn't get talked about enough, is kind of the point I was going for.
Yeah, he deserves to be part of the larger picture. CMLL is kind of in its own little spot. Like, it's kind of hard to access and kind of, I mean, you really have to be a Lucha fan to get CMLL this year. And so I feel like that kind of, like, the reach that you have to do and the research that you have to do to find CMLL has left him out of the larger picture when it shouldn't have, because his work definitely necessitates his inclusion here.
Yeah.
Very fair. Well, our final category of the 2020 end of year awards. Well, Dusty, go ahead and take it away. Let our audience know, what is our final category?
We have the match of the year. You hear me mention match of the year candidates all the time, so this is a natural fit for me. I love the match of the year category. Our first nominee was also our most recent match, Kenny Omega versus Laredo Kid at Triple Mania 28 for AAA. Our second nominee is Penta versus Phoenix 2, Part Dos, on AEW Dynamite. Our nominee for the third position is Pentagon versus Io del Vikingo from AAA Lucha Fighter. Our nominee number 4 is Santos Escobar versus Drake Maverick from NXT. And nominee number 5 is Titan versus Sobenario Jr. And that was in CMLL. And just so many good matches this year. I nominated I'll go with my first one, even though it's kind of out of order. I chose the Pentagon versus Io del Vikingo match. It was almost impossible. I also nominated Penta versus Phoenix 2, but this one had the edge for me because it happened in Mexico, and it did a lot to vault a talent into the larger wrestling consciousness with Io del Vikingo. This was an amazing match, and as soon as it happened, we had instant memes, GIFs, cutaways of Io del Vikingo. People loved it at the time, and that brought him into the larger international wrestling consciousness. They came together, Pentagon and Vikingo, during such a turbulent time, early COVID. It's hard to remember now, but 8-9 months ago, we didn't know a lot of what was going on. It was much scarier, much less informed. They came together in that turbulent time to not only wrestle matches, but they wrestled matches and brought their very best stuff. With hindsight, we can easily say that this was the greatest empty arena match of the year. Like, the spot that's memorable. Yes. Vikingo dived like a madman the entire match. Pentagon did some devastating work. There was a gorilla press drop through Vikingo onto the apron. Vikingo hit a springboard 450 off the second rope. Like the second rope. They were just wrestling like they were determined to be the best match of the tournament, and it ended up being the best match of the year. Pentagon was at his most motivated. We haven't seen him this vicious and motivated since early Lucha Underground. This was the Pentagon Jr. we remember. This is the one we all fell in love with. He even had an older style mask. He was under the name Pentagon Jr. for the first time in a long time. It just all felt so special. And everything in the match had like an oh my god feel. And you never knew when it was going to end because everything had that feel, where you just didn't know when it was going to end. And like for me, that was my choice for match of the year. But Penta versus Phoenix 2 was really difficult. What a fantastic match that was. It was on TV, so it was the wider wrestling audience, more casual fans saw it. It was one of the highest rated weeks for AEW Dynamite at that point. And these guys have wrestled each other, I believe, 9 times now, but they really showed us what they could do that night. We saw the mask tearing. We saw brother versus brother. There were so many dynamics that played into it that just cannot be understated. I couldn't have even imagined that it would turn out like it was. It was such a brutal affair. The longer it went, it got more brutal. There was a developing story, Kingston dividing the Lucha Brothers, and, the animosity between them growing more and more intense, and they became more underhanded and brutal towards each other. And then Penta finally got the main event heel vibes that we wanted in AEW. Phoenix was a face in the whole thing. It was incredible. This was really a beautiful match for so many reasons and so good. And easily the best lucha match on television for me, like on a television show.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I
agree.
That's in direct conflict with one of my nominations. I nominated the Escobar Drake Maverick match.
Yeah, that's a second choice. That's so good. It's hard. It's Sophie's choice. How can you pick?
And the reason I nominated it was exactly that. I thought it was the perfect television match. Like, you had good wrestling.
Good point.
You had good wrestling, great storytelling. You had a ending that made you more interested in seeing what the heck was going to happen next. I just thought it had a little bit of everything. You really got to showcase Escobar's talent And then Drake Maverick made him look like a star. So yeah.
And it was the most interested I had ever been in Drake Maverick in WWE.
Yeah.
Like, I don't mean that disparagingly.
No.
I mean, like, I liked him before that, but when they had that feud, I was like, oh, and it was so good.
Yeah.
And the storyline with trying to get his contract back, and oh my gosh, that was so good. People, like, again, it seems like a long time ago because it was 2020, but that was, oh, the work was exquisite. And so the finesse of it all was just beautiful.
Yeah. Miranda, I know you like Santos Escobar, and I thought you might want to say something.
You know, I was a little surprised that you nominated this, but as you explain it makes perfect sense as far as the great team match, a great storyline, and also the beginning of this change of Hijo del Fantasma to Escobar. And so this was the catalyst for it. So, and again, you think of Libre matches in WWE, we don't see very many of them. So this was one of the best Lucha Libre matches, if not the best one that WWE had all year. So when you think about that WWE representation, I feel like this is the one that carries that through. And I just to echo, I mean, I echo a lot of what Dusty said too in some of his other matches. It is, I think both of you have made such good points about the nominees thus far.
Yeah, I mean, it's just been, we've had a lot of good matches this year, but that was, you know, one of the special ones. And again, like, it's so hard to pick. And truly the finest, maybe the finest lucha match WWE has ever had on TV, but it was definitely the finest they aired this year. And then, again, you know, like, we got AEW, the finest lucha match they've aired this year. It's so hard to compare the two, the Lucha Fighter match. But then we also have Kenny Omega versus Laredo Kid at Triple Mania, and that was just amazing. Like, it's so recent in everybody's mind, but what a fantastic match.
Yeah.
And, I mean, like, so special. Kenny Omega handpicked Laredo Kid for that match. You know, and so that ought to tell you a lot about it, you know, an exceeding amount about it. But, and he's not going to work with anything except the very best. But they were so much more than the sum of their parts. I could not believe how good it was. Kids loved it even. A lot of my son's friends, he's 15, they were texting back and forth about it, you know, because they had heard about it on Dynamite. So they all wanted to watch it, and they were all texting back and forth. The interest in the eyes that this brought to AAA cannot be understated. The Kenny wanting to continue against Vikingo, like the things, the ripples from it, it just absolutely deserves a mention as match of the year.
Yeah, absolutely.
That second rope, One-Winged Angel was fantastic. It was, there was just so much going on to really make it the match of the year, or a match of the year candidate, at least. Match of the Triple Mania card for sure.
Yeah, it definitely was match of the night. So going viral is why I nominated the Titan versus Sobranario Jr. That was one of the first matches that went absolutely viral early in the year. Like, everybody was talking about it, and they did so much so they did 2 or 3 matches of these two together. Absolutely fantastic match. It's a CMLL, so it was 2 out of 3 falls, which gives you a very different storytelling than you're going to get out of other matches. Like, your Kenny Omega Laredo Kid didn't have the same drama of Kenny, Laredo getting a fall on it, on him would have done.
Right.
Like I said, like we were alluding to earlier and outright saying, we weren't just alluding to it, being able to have a match that is so good in the CMLL format that the wrestling world is electrified by it, just based on how hard it is to get eyes on the CMLL product, means that it was something truly special and extraordinary. And I felt that alone made it worthy of being in the conversation. But to me, it was a nearly perfect match. There was so much that I loved about this match.
It really was, and it was they stole the show at CMLL's 87th anniversary.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, they truly did. I think we could easily see somebody like, or both of them, Titan and Silverano Jr. in something like the G1 or the Super Junior or even the Junior Tag League. We've seen them tag together.
Yep.
And so these are guys that have a lot of charisma and talent and knowledge of each other, and they used it to vault themselves into the larger consciousness with this in a way that so few can. And it was a fantastic match. People on Twitter were posting about it. That Friday night, the world was on fire. We're talking about Titan and Silverano Jr. So,
yes.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, our 6 categories and our nominations for the 2020 End of Year Awards by the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast team. Stay tuned, because next week is when we will reveal our winners of each of the categories. And if you need a reminder, we'll run through them again. We have Rising Star of the Year, Trio of the Year, Tag Team of the Year, Luchadora of the Year, Luchador of the Year, and Match of the Year. So make sure you come back next week and join us as we reveal our picks for the winners of each of these categories. We'll let you know how we came to the determination of these winners. You may be surprised by some of our picks. Maybe you're not. Who knows? You'll have to just find out by listening and watching to the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast English edition. A big thank you, as always, for listening, and in this case, watching the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast. Again, don't forget to follow luchacentral.com. Their social media is at luchacentralcom on a Facebook and Instagram, and at Lucha Central.com on Twitter. Of course, the page has a lot of great matches and interviews. And while you're at it, go ahead and follow us on social media. Brendan, can you let our listeners know where they can find you on social media?
I am 321 T-shirt guy. That's the numbers 321, and then T-shirt guy is all spelled out. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. And most importantly, I'm on Twitch. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Twitter all the time.
Yeah.
All the freaking time.
And Dusty, can you let our listeners know where they can find you on social media?
Yeah, I am on Facebook at facebook.com/Dusty Murphy, but more likely you will catch me on Instagram at Dusty Murphy, all one word. And yeah, I'm on Instagram pretty much all the time, like Brendan on Twitter. So send me your pictures, your video clips, your lucha, anything, and your masks. I want to see your masks. Send it all to me on Instagram at Dusty Murphy. And how about you, Miranda? Where can our friends find you?
You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at the #Miranda, hashtag spelled out. And I am also, those are my only 2 forms of social media. I am not on Twitter, so that's why you can go at the Future Guy for any of your Twitter inquiries or questions.
Absolutely.
Yes, that's how we do it. We are true trios. We take each other's messages on social media. So that's a true trio. But again, thank you all for listening, for watching. Come back next week as we reveal the winners of the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast English Edition 2020 End of Year Awards. For Brendan Barr and for Dusty Murphy, I'm Miranda Morales. Thank you, and we'll be back next week.
Respetable público, lucharán a 2 de 3.